The more things change, the more they stay the same. For the 7th consecutive season, Mike St. Green is here with us, and we are here to unveil the SFL Season 23 schedule. But, Mike, we've got so many changes in the SFL. I mean, we don't know what to do with it. First off, how are you doing?
Doing great, Cam. In case, the people hear some hammering and sawing in the background, we're getting this thing, trying to get this thing renovated for the convention this summer. And hopefully we can have a great meet and greet over here again at the St. Green residence. But man, I'm doing fantastic. Good to be back, as you mentioned, for the 7th season running. And man, season 23, a season full of huge question marks for sure.
It's a tradition unlike any other. Anyway, the schedule release show. But yeah, lots of changes. Let's go over first, Mike, the 3 new expansion teams. We've got the Albuquerque Adams, the Pittsburgh Riverhogs, the Nashville Tempo coming into the SFL from the minors. These are teams that are having to start from scratch, but Albuquerque's won a few titles down in the minor league. Nashville and Pittsburgh had very good first seasons and are filled with enthusiasm, but because signings don't start until the 10th, we literally do not have any idea who's on these teams or what they're going to look like. What are you most excited to see about in terms of their release of their schedules tonight?
Well, let's start with Albuquerque. I mean, they have been a successful minor league franchise for a long time, have a couple of minor league championships under their belt. And Cam, one interesting thing about Albuquerque, I am in the Albuquerque Hall of Fame. Hey, it is what it is. I have the slime green jacket in the closet to prove it. And well, also, did you know that I threw for tens of yards for this team?
Man, that's
tens.
The last
and actually I threw the first touchdown in minor league history for that team, and they made me the wide receiver that I am today.
The last time I saw you throw a pass, Mike, both of our beards were black. It's crazy. It's been too long, but yeah.
Well, they made me the receiver I am today, Cam. So hey, there's that.
Well, we're excited to see those schedules. Hey, Jacob Clear's got the super chats going quick. That means Charleston's going to be the first team schedule we're going to look at. $5 super chat, Hall of Fame, Big Boss, Jack Brown retirement tour. That's right, Jack Brown is going in the Hall of Fame as part of the 2024 class. We'll break down the convention schedule here coming up. The 3 other new teams, Mike, are teams with varying degrees of lineage and history, but Alamo City's no more. Bossier City is in. Frank Wade, a.k.a. Garrison Blue, Gunny McGuire. These are 2 very respected names, along with Ace Fennick and company in that front office staff. They're leading the Steamers charge. They've got some great branding, and it's been really fun to watch them in the minor leagues. But the Lexington Miners are also kind of taking over, picking up where the Tulsa Desperados left off. A lot of familiar faces in that franchise, although they'll be wearing totally different colors. And then last but not least, you've got you have the let me cheat because this is live television. I can't remember everything. You have the Chicago Warriors, of course, who are opening up the season as announced earlier against the Florida Storm in the kickoff game, but they are a lot of the old Seattle nemesis. Now going over and sort of merging those franchises. So we know a little bit more about those 3 teams, Mike, but not as much as maybe some of the others.
Yeah, it's very interesting having Chicago back, in SFL. They were once the Chicago Wildcats, so it's good to, and I think they were champions once in their first season in the league. So it's good to have the city of Chicago back in the league. As you mentioned, Tulsa moving over to Lexington, and like I said, since we don't know the construct of a lot of these rosters, the first thing comes to mind is Gabriel Manning going to move over to Lexington with the Miners, or is he going to move on and be a dynamic receiver somewhere else? And then Bossier City, man, this Cam, this is one of the more interesting moves to me of the off season, because what I did in off season, what I've been doing all my off season, I decided to do this 23andMe and check my lineage and see where the St. Greens came from, and now let's look at Bossier City. I know a little bit about this team's lineage, Cam, and that's what kind of got me to thinking about this. This team it came from Alamo City. Alamo City came from Lone Star, which is Denton.
Yeah.
Denton came from Seattle, and then I think they originally came from Dallas, which was a few miles away from Fort Worth and Denton. And this franchise has been all over the place, Cam. Man, tracing this team's lineage has been interesting, and we're going to see how they do in the new town of Bossier City.
I agree with you. It's the most complex and interesting. And the fact is, Mike, is they've been to a number of championship games, but they haven't been able to win any of them. The Tyrants went, the Lone Star Glory went. And Dallas went as well back in season 8 when they lost to Queen City, and the Corsairs got their 4th title and still chasing their 5th. So it's crazy times, but Bossier City and that franchise continue the trek on, looking for that ultimate prize. Where did you end up coming from, Mike?
It said that I was like 42% Nigerian and from the Igbo people in Nigeria. So,
Okay.
but something 71% West African.
Well, hey, either way, it's all fun. It is fun to figure out where you came from. I think mine said 100% football. I don't really know what that means. I don't know if I was. But
it has to be a percentage of ice cream in there somewhere. It just has to be.
It's about all I know. All right, enough fooling around. Let's get to the schedule. It's why you're all here. Super chats rolling in. We'll get to all those. But first, we've got the opening week convention schedule. Now, Mike, we've got the 6 live games slated. You'll see them isolated on this graphic, but a couple of them could be flexed in and out depending upon convention participants. You know, every once in a while, we've got a team that kind of rolls in last minute, and all of a sudden, they got 10 guys that are there and ready to see their team play. So we could see some shuffling in some of the matchups in terms of the isolated games, but we've still got 12 great matchups. Of course, one team a year gets the shaft. 25 teams, it's an odd number. There's nothing we can do about it, right? So somebody's unfortunately got that bye, but we do our best here in the SFL. And with that, let's look at the Week 1 SFL 2024 Convention Weekend schedule. And that looks like this: a triple header on Friday, July 12th to kick things off. Chicago, Florida. We talked about it earlier in League Alerts in the Discord channel. Chicago going to Florida for that banner unveiling. Then after that, the host Headhunters host Pittsburgh. Your sons-in-laws. Did I say that right? Sons-in-laws?
No, that's not right.
It must be.
No, stepsons.
Stepsons. Okay.
I think that's what. Well, I mean, they're my boys, so we'll
they're your boys. No matter what, they're your boys, and you're going to be playing your boys and hosting a game. Of course, Houston hosting the convention as well. Pittsburgh, Houston, that's going to be amazing. Then, after that, at 10 Eastern, once everyone is all lathered up and having a good time, Mike Daggs and Gerald Smith will bring their confetti and whatever else they're going to bring to the convention, and they're going to be slinging insults and having good times and good laughs. Mexico City takes on Louisiana. Of course, we're going to have Mike and Matt previewing the season and Week 1 and all that good stuff live at the convention as well. So let me get your first thoughts on the triple header. I know you want to talk about Pittsburgh, Houston. That's just going to be a blast.
Well, that's definitely going to be a blast, Cam, and it's going to be a house divided, and Butch and Taylor and Corey. I don't know who their mom's going to root for, but it may be me standing alone over here on this side over here. But man, it's going to be interesting family gathering there at the convention to see who can come out with bragging rights for that game. And the other one on Friday night, Mexico City and Louisiana. What brings to mind is that now there's 2 teams in Louisiana, 2 teams in Texas, and then Mexico City stands alone, of course, as they always have. Now, do we affectionately rename that South Division from Tex-Mex to Texiana?
Texiana? I don't know. I mean, you still got we need to throw Cajun in there or something because, Cajun, Tex-Mex. I don't know. I'm not Not good at nicknames, Mike. Why do you put me on the spot like this? But either way, it's still awesome to have that game in week 1. Let's jump to the Hall of Fame game. Vancouver, Carolina, Saturday night. Andy Hamilton, Brett Killian, 2 Vancouver Legion standards. They go in. Chris Curtis, a former wide receiver for Vancouver, now playing for Carolina. They go in. Both teams are going to have a number of players there in attendance, and Andy Hamilton goes back to where it all began. He got his coaching start in Carolina. Vancouver, Carolina is going to be an incredible game on Saturday night. In the early game right now, Albuquerque's slated to take on Atlanta. That's Joshua Williams coming back to Atlanta to take on the Swarm. Some other games on Saturday, Minnesota at Indianapolis. That one is always fun. I don't know if Mickey Malillo is going to bring that costume or not, but it's going to be hot as all get out there in Houston. Fort Worth takes on Lexington. These are 2 pairs of Texas owners. The Swift brothers who own Lexington, they are from Texas. Stephen Hacker, Luis Gonzalez own Fort Worth. They are from Texas, and all of them will be there for that game. That should be exciting. And then Nashville at D.C., Mike, James Walters taking on his former team. He's part of the ownership group in Nashville. He's been an incredible defensive coordinator there in D.C. for many seasons. Is one of the reasons why D.C. has become the power that they are. And now the Dragons will host the Tempo. A tough game for Nashville's inaugural game, but still should be exciting.
Yeah, that should have been an exciting matchup, and that's one of the reasons why we have this huge question mark on this season, right, Cam, is that, we have, guys that have been in other places are finally getting that shot to run their own team, run their own organization the way the way that they see fit, and it's going to be interesting to see how they go up against some of the old pros that have been around this league for a long time, and it's just going to be interesting to see how it all plays out throughout the course of the season.
Now, moving on to Sunday, still some very tasty matchups on the menu here. Canton at Baltimore. No love lost between these 2 teams. This is a quarterfinal rematch. Baltimore gave Canton everything they could handle, and that game goes to Baltimore. The Vultures lost their home opener last season to Queen City, so they're going to try to start on the right foot. Bossier City at Motor City. Remember, Robert Thump left the Alamo City organization, which is now Bossier City. He's now the head coach in Motor City, and he's going to take on those Steamers in week 1, trying to lead the V8s into a new era. And then Queen City will take on Denver. The game to cap it off, Los Angeles, Arizona, Rochelle Colston, Eddie Gage. We know them as 2 great broadcasters, and they are also very good friends. You got Sully Richardson, Ashley Jackson, a couple quarterbacks live and in person at the convention as well, so that should be a fun one that wraps up convention weekend.
Yeah, and one thing that we do know, and we haven't seen the entire schedule of the Arizona Scorpions yet, and this has been the case for 7 seasons running, Cam. Arizona has by far the toughest schedule in the history of the league that we've ever seen, and that's been 7 seasons running.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be 8 seasons running, Mike. And, hey, Charleston got the week 1 bye. Minnesota got it last season. I saw Hartshorn in the chat saying, hey, it gives us more time to prep. That's the way that Minnesota looked at it. And I think when Charleston sees their early part of their schedule, they're probably going to say, maybe we need that week 1 bye to prep. Charleston over the last couple of seasons has been a slow starter, but a fast finisher. We'll see if that plays true out again this season. Let's get to the Monday night spectacular schedule. Mike, you and I are back doing SFL this week as the main duo, going through all the highlights and talking about the week's action. So we're looking forward to that. And then Charles Doherty's back in the booth with me for a second consecutive season on the calls, and those games are always a blast. Chris Curtis, Tyler Falk, the whole Monday night crew will be back. And here's a look at the Monday night spectacular schedule this season, and man, there are some doozies. All right, let's take a look at it. It starts in week 2. We leaked it earlier today. Sir Ron Yates IV. Baltimore says he retires in a post, and he comes out and he's like, hey, I haven't retired. And then Indianapolis announces him to his front office. Indianapolis is going to be a new-look team. They're trying to bounce back from missing the playoffs. They're going to be in Baltimore. Week 3, that's the Pittsburgh Riverhogs home opener, and they are going to be hosting the Charleston Predators in that game. That is your Week 3 Monday Night Spectacular. The Riverhogs under the lights there. Week 4, no love lost. DC at Canton. This game was a semifinal war and the Canton Classics ended up advancing. DC none too pleased about that, and they will try to get Canton in week number 4. Week 5, Mike, is the return of Matt Wilson's celebration on Monday the 12th, and we've got a doubleheader honoring some of our fallen: Billy Ray Valentine, Matt Wilson, Rich Pratchard, and Leonard Butler Sr., all 4 of those teams in action that evening. Hey, Eddie Gage gets a Monday night home game. He's been talking about that for a long time. He's going to take on his show producer, Joshua Williams, and the rest of the Albuquerque Adams in a new West rivalry game in week 5. Week 6, Carolina goes to Nashville as we check in on the East, and we get to see the Nashville Tempo in prime time under the lights for the first time. And then in week 7, week 8 rather, it is the new battle for Louisiana. Bossier City at Louisiana. Can't wait to see what the shirts say in the crowd at Stack Up Stadium. They always have some very creative apparel in store for that one. So that's the first half of the Monday Night Spectacular schedule. What sticks out to you, Mike?
Well, definitely the opening Monday night game with Indianapolis and Baltimore, especially when you add in the fact that, whatever the deal was going on with Sir Ron Yates, where Baltimore announces that he's retiring, and then all of a sudden he shows up in Indianapolis, and the word on the street is that, Indianapolis are making some serious changes to that roster, and I can't wait for free agency to see what, they all are, if they all that I have rumored to have heard, if they all come to fruition for that team. Indianapolis seems to be making some serious moves in the offseason. And then, that Albuquerque and Arizona, that out west is going to look very different this season. Albuquerque, Arizona, Denver, LA, and Vancouver. That's going to be interesting out west. I don't think it's going to be an easy matchup out there for anyone. And that's starting out week 2 with that one to try to get an early supremacy in the west is going to be interesting. And then of course at I-49, Bossier City and Louisiana down in Houma. That's going to be an interesting matchup as well to see how these two Louisiana teams match up with one another.
Let's talk about the second half of the schedule. Let's go to week 9, the championship rematch between Florida and Canton. And folks, that is the only game of the entire week. Every team has a bye week 9 except that game. So that Monday night game is the lone game of that week. It stands on its own as Canton tries to get revenge on Florida, and that one in prime time. Week 10, Minnesota at Houston, a rematch of that, the quarterfinal game that was fantastic. Went to overtime. Minnesota won by the skin of their teeth. That game is in Houston. Week 11, Arizona at Florida. Eddie and Mighty, what more could you ask for in that? Week 12, Houston, Mexico City. This is one of the best. Every time these teams play, it seems like it comes down to the wire. And last season, it came down to the 1-yard line. So that's going to be an exciting game as well. Week 13, another banger. I don't know how many flexes we're going to get this season, Mike. Baltimore at D.C., a huge matchup in the North Division. The North's got both of those and Canton to deal with. And then in Week 14, it's a rematch of the semifinal. Minnesota had them. They had them, but 2 return touchdowns by Art Vandelay pushed Florida over the top, got them into the championship. That game is in Minnesota. And then, of course, the final game of the season to be determined, the second half of the season on Monday. Mike, what stands out?
This second half of this Monday night schedule, if things go as they went last season, let's just say if things go according to chalk, and a lot of these teams, continue to be successful as they were this previous season, this is going to be an excellent second half of the season on Monday night. It's must-see TV pretty much every Monday night. Of course, the rematch with Florida and Canton, I'm pretty sure Canton has some serious revenge on their minds. Minnesota, Houston, of course, the Headhunters definitely have revenge on their mind for the quarterfinal loss in overtime up there in Minnesota. And this is kind of turning into a little mini rivalry as well, Cam, just as far as the times that they've met and how competitive a lot of these games have been when the Legend and the Headhunters have met one another. Arizona and Florida is always going to be entertaining. Baltimore and DC. Of course, that's a battle for the capital, and then another rematch in the playoffs that was excellent. And pretty much the only reason why Florida advanced was a lot of special teams with Florida and Minnesota. Florida special teams came through and vaulted them to the championship game, and obviously on to a championship as well. So that's going to be some interesting matchups and great matchups in the second half of the Monday Night Spectacular.
Now, last season, Mike Daggs and Gerald Smith came to me and they said, "Hey, we want to do a pregame show. Could you do a little production, and could we get going like a half an hour before kickoff? I mean, you're already going to be sitting there about ready to do the games. What's the big deal?" And I said, "Sure. Let's fire it up and see what happens." Well, it turned out that it was very popular among a lot of people. And look, SFL this week anchors the end of the week. We kind of recap everything, and the Matt Wilson Weekly Kickoff Show, sort of anchors the beginning of the week and gets us going, gets us right for the week. So I went to Gerald and Mike and I said, "Hey, how about we get you guys a schedule and put you guys on Friday night so that we get Mike and Gerald for pregame and a primetime game each Friday." And they said that they would love it. So without further ado, here is the inaugural Friday night spotlight slate in the SFL, and that schedule looks like this. We start, of course, with Chicago, Florida to kick off the SFL season Friday at the convention. Hey, week 2, Albuquerque's home opener. They host the Denver Nightwings. Everybody's talking about Jeremy Vega being back in the coaching ranks. Who knows what Denver's going to look like in this offseason. There's a little bit more buzz than there has been over the past few seasons. I can't wait to see what they do. Albuquerque playing their first SFL home game. That is going to be exciting. Hey, if Marcus Dunhill stays with the Fort Worth Toros, Mike, it would be his first trip back to Atlanta ever. Can you believe that? As a league that loves to schedule storylines, it's hard to believe that Marcus Dunhill's never been back to Atlanta, at least by our records. Week 3, he gets that opportunity as Fort Worth goes to the Swarm. Week 4, it's a bit of regional action. Mike and Gerald have their pick between Lexington and Bossier City. That's Bossier City's home opener, or Atlanta at Motor City. In week 5, Canton goes to Chicago, or maybe you'll see Houston at Carolina with Mike and Gerald. And then in week 6, Minnesota and DC, a good game there. Skip a couple weeks, get to week 8. Baltimore goes to Queen City. The Corsairs won that game last season, that Baltimore home opener, and it's Queen City's first time hosting Baltimore in a few years, so they'll get their hand at that rematch. A couple weeks later, Chicago goes to Fort Worth, and then a couple of weeks after that, Indy is at Chicago. Big game in the Central Division up for grabs. On October 4th, Florida at Vancouver. That's a rematch of last season's overtime thriller in the regular season, and then another quarterfinal matchup. And then coming down the stretch, the week 14, next to last week of the season, either Arizona, Vancouver, or Carolina, Lexington. And then obviously a big game in the final week of the season to be determined. Mike, what sticks out on Fridays?
The first thing that sticks out, Cam, is that Chicago fans don't plan anything on Friday night. You plan on Friday nights most nights this season, it looks like. But that Denver and Albuquerque, that stands out to me for a lot of reasons. Albuquerque getting their first home game in the majors, and Denver, as you mentioned, Jeremy Vega is either rumored to be coming back as a head coach or actually coming back as head coach. And Jeremy kind of reminds me of Bobby Fischer, Cam. He comes in, he wins a couple of championships, and he disappears for a couple of seasons, comes back, wins a championship. Now he's been gone for a long time. And is he coming back to win another championship and disappear again? We'll see. But that Denver and Albuquerque matchup, that's going to be a great matchup. Another one of those matchups out west, and Albuquerque is going to have to prove themselves early in that Western Division to see if they can, translate over to the majors with what the success that they had in the minors.
So that is your Friday slate. We look forward to joining Mike and Gerald every Friday night, or most Friday nights throughout the season. And then there's some other Fridays. Some Friday night games have 3 games, 2 games, or just a single isolated game. So we'll see the rest of the Friday games as we roll along here. But now it's time to get to the team schedules. It means it's time to get to your super chats, and we start with Jacob Clear's $5 super chat that he got in on Charleston. And hold on tight, Charleston, because the beginning of your schedule is quite challenging. Can you finish strong? Let's find out. The Charleston Predators season 23 schedule looks like this. That week 1 bye for the extra prep, but then a pair of road games at Chicago and then at Pittsburgh for the Riverhogs home opener on Monday night. And then their home opener, Mike, is against Florida. So that's not great. Charleston, of course, played them tough, went to overtime in week 1 of last season, but they got the defending champs there. Followed by 2 out of 3 at home, Denver, Lexington, and on the road against Houston. And they wrap it up with a pair of divisional road games at Carolina, at Atlanta, and then they get 2 weeks to prepare for Baltimore in week 14. Your thoughts on Charleston's schedule?
Well, let's just go by what we feel like we know. And you've looked at it as being a little tough. I look at it as being, okay, well, Charleston, you get an opportunity maybe to, after the bye week, of course, you get an opportunity to ease your way into this season and feel your way around and see what you really have. A Chicago team that's relocated, of course, we're assuming most of that Seattle roster will be intact with Chicago and Pittsburgh, obviously, an expansion team, and we don't know what they're going to have over there. But then again, like you say, they meet the champions, 2-time defending champions now in Florida in week 3. But Charleston is going to have an opportunity to sit back and maybe ease their way into this season. Of course, no game in this league is easy, but not as tough as I feel like you think it is. I don't think it seems as tough to start out the first few weeks.
I will say, Mike, they are the only team that plays all 6 teams with new or reconfigured leadership groups. Chicago, Pittsburgh, and then 4 in a row. Lexington, Albuquerque, Nashville, Bossier City, right in the middle of the schedule. So if you're talking about, being a team that's been in the league for a long time and handling your business, that's the time to handle business against some of the more fresher faces in the league.
And by the way, Cam, Bobby Fischer was a chess champion. He would win and disappear for like 10 years.
No, I didn't know he was.
I know you didn't know. That's why I figured out. I know that was way over your head. You didn't know who he was, but he would disappear and win, and disappear another 10 years and win. But that's what that reference was.
I'm happy to play along with your whole Cam doesn't know anything about nothing bit. It is it's just good to see you happy. That's all, Mike. $4.99 super chat from Adam Wiseman. # ramble on. Let's take a look at Indianapolis's summer 2024 season schedule. Of course, they start with Minnesota, then a pair of road games at Baltimore and at Mexico City. That Baltimore game in the big Monday night spot. They play 2 West teams back-to-back in between a couple of byes, Albuquerque and Los Angeles. They finish the season with Lexington and Carolina. Pretty balanced schedule for Indianapolis. Not a whole lot of past playoff opponents or former playoff opponents, but it is worth noting that 3 of their last 4 are against playoff teams from last season. They just look a little bit different. Seattle, Tulsa, Houston, those 3 teams down there at the bottom with Houston, Chicago, Lexington. Your thoughts on Indy?
If Indy are putting together the roster that we think that they're putting together, they are going to be one of the tougher teams in this league this season. Just from what I have kind of heard through the few months of free agency of off-season activities, but tough schedule to start out, Cam. Minnesota, Baltimore, Mexico City are always tough. Nashville, from what we know of them, they're going to be well put together organization. So if they are putting together a great roster, they need to come out of the gate swinging, because it's going to be tough on these guys to get started early on in the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, anytime you got to play 2 teams that made the playoffs last season back to back to start, you don't want to get too down on yourselves, right? So Indianapolis is going to try to keep that morale high throughout the season. $20 super chat from James Walters. Let's see the tempo. Absolutely. The Nashville Tempo's inaugural season in the SFL looks like this. They start with DC, and then probably one of the most underrated buys, Mike, a buy after the convention. You don't have to worry about game planning for your team next week. You get to go home either happy or sad, but either way, you don't go home stressed. But Nashville does start with 3 of 4 on the road. They only have one home game in the first 5 weeks. That is a home opener against Los Angeles. They cap the season with a pair of South teams, but they avoid any South teams that made the playoffs. Louisiana and Mexico City are their last 2 with a bye sandwiched in. Their bye spacing is pretty solid. They play 4 out of 6 at home in the middle of their schedule, with their last 3 road games against teams that did not make the playoffs last season. Your thoughts on Nashville?
First of all, Cam, I don't know what it is, but I like everything about the branding of this team, and I'm excited to see them come up to the majors and see what they can do, see if they can come out and make an impression on the league in the major leagues this season. Yeah, the DC game, we talked about that convention week, and it's a great break for them to get a bye and be able to sit back and evaluate what may have happened in week 1, whether it's win or loss, see some things that they can improve on, and then they're able to take on a team in Los Angeles that has struggled the past couple of seasons. So it may be a good start for Nashville just coming out of the gates.
Doug Day asking in the chat, why is there a big bye on week 9? Well, I'll tell you what, a certain someone in the league, Tyler Falk, is getting married. There's a big bachelor party going on that weekend. You also have the NFL opening weekend as well. So we said, hey, you know what? We'll put the championship game rematch on Monday, and then we'll let the whole rest of the week speak for itself. But yeah, that's a look at Nashville's schedule, and I agree with you, Mike. I think this team has done a phenomenal job, with putting this organization together. Can't wait to see the pieces that they have in place. They get the defending champs in Florida. That's probably the toughest part. And then they host Canton too. So somehow they end up with both Florida and Canton on their schedule. So that's pretty challenging. But at least they're spaced out. It's not like they got to play them back to back or anything.
Yeah, that's definitely good to have the defending champs and a team that probably had the most dominating season in the history of the league, especially on the defensive side. Good to have those spaced out, especially when you're trying to, meander your way through this schedule and see how you're going to do this season being a new franchise.
Chris Delro, $5 super chat. Cheers to season 23. Let's make it one to remember. I agree, Chris. $4.99 super chat from Skippy. Season 23, say more like the Carolina schedule. Please, Carolina Skyhawks. Let's take a look at them. They start, of course, with that big Hall of Fame game against Vancouver, then a couple road games with a bye in between at Fort Worth, at LA. They return home week 5 to take on Houston. So 3 of the first 4 teams they face are going to be from last season's playoffs. They do have Florida on the schedule as a division rival. They are at Baltimore. That's a big rivalry game for them as well on a Friday night. They finish off the season with the Corbin Cup against Charleston, and then they have 2 weeks to prep for Lexington, and then finally Indianapolis at the end. What do you think of Carolina's start and finish?
Carolina's always that team when you're expecting them to take that next step every season. Hey, when are the Skyhawks going to make that next step and make a good playoff push or maybe a championship push? But it's going to be tough to start out this one this season, Cam. With that, as you mentioned, 3 out of the first 4 teams that they're going to face playoff teams. They have Baltimore mixed in there. They have Atlanta in there. The defending champs are in there. So this is going to be a tough season for them to take that step forward. But hey, anything can happen in this league. Like I said, there's a total question mark on this season with all the changes that have been made. So it'll be interesting to see how Carolina can fare early on and see if they can make a step forward in season 23.
All right, what do we got next? We got Harish dinging his brother, saying he sucks for $5. Love that. The infighting has already begun in Carolina. That's great. War from John Fullerton, $9.99 super chat. He wants to see Chicago. Wish granted. The Chicago Warriors schedule looks like this. They got a couple home games in July against Charleston and Arizona before they head on the road to Pittsburgh. That's three of their first 5 games are against teams, either teams that didn't make the playoffs or teams that made the championship. I should say their first 5 games is a hodgepodge of that. 2 out of 3 at home. to end the season, and both of them are divisional home games against Indy and Minnesota. So 2 big home games down the stretch. They only have 2 home games after September 1st. So some late buys. They've got 6 straight games in a row. That Mexico City game kind of sandwiched Chicago a little bit unlucky with bye placement. But they do get 2 weeks to prep for Minnesota in that last game of the season. What do you think of Chicago?
Let's assume that this is mostly the Seattle Nemesis roster, which turned out the last couple of seasons to be a pretty solid team, had made great improvements from their inception into the league a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, tough way to start at Florida, but then they got Charleston and Arizona, which is, Arizona had a down season last season, but we fully expect them to bounce back. And then Pittsburgh and then Canton. As I said, a mixed way to start this season, but and we're assuming the Seattle roster. I expect the Chicago team to come out and make strides early on in this season.
That's a look at the Chicago Warriors. We are catching up on all the many chatters going on. The schedule release show, one of my favorites throughout the season. It's so great to renew the hype and renew the energy. Mac Dre with a $10 super chat. He got Indianapolis as early as well. He says, why not hashtag ramble on. Thanks, Mac. Sultan, $10 super chat. I am 95% dog. Hashtag howl at the moon. I guess that's from my 23andMe. I do like dogs, so that makes that I'm good with that. I'll take it. I don't know if Mike St. Green would agree, but I'll take it. Let's see, what other super chats do we have to catch up on here in the chat? Thanks for being patient with us. Justin Reside, $5 super chat. The Corsairs get back on the ship and hope to raise the Jolly Roger. Season 23, hashtag Pirate Life, hashtag QCC4CJM. Let's take a look at the Corsairs schedule. I'm excited by this team. I was excited by this team last season, Mike. I think they took a big step forward. Can they take another big step forward? They have a pretty good start to their schedule. Only one playoff team in their first 6 games. That was the DC Dragons before taking on Baltimore in that big Friday night primetime game. They finish hosting Canton, but they get 2 weeks to prep for the Classics, and then at Pittsburgh. So 2 divisional games there after a bye week to end the season. What do you think, Queen City?
One of the 3 original franchises remaining in the SFL, Cam, and a 4-time champion. And as you mentioned, they did make strides last season, after being down a few seasons. And it's time for the Corsairs to get back to glory, Cam. Like I said, being an original franchise, a 4-time champion, we really would like to see Queen City get back to their place of glory in this league. And really and truly, no better way to start this schedule, seemingly, than the way that they're going to start it. They have an opportunity to really take advantage of some opponents early and probably make some noise and make a playoff push.
Well, Queen City and Pittsburgh's division is hard. They got Canton, D.C., and Baltimore. That's tough. So you can see Canton, Baltimore, D.C. on their schedule. But their out-of-division schedule could have been a lot worse. They really kind of made out like bandits. I mean, the crazy thing about this season, Mike, is there's so many different new faces, and there's so few teams that we think are just going to be not good, right? We lost a couple of franchises that for years had not made the playoffs, and even the franchises that we have now, like a Motor City or a Queen City who hasn't had a playoff run in a while, they have new coaching staffs and a sort of a renewed energy about them. So I would hate for someone to be doing the power rankings in the SFL. I'm sure we'll see it after free agency, the all too early power rankings. But I don't know who you put last right now, because it should be a very competitive season, especially just down at the bottom of the league.
Indianapolis is last because of Chad.
Dang. What did
But,
Chad do? Am I missing something here? Do you and Chad have a beef? Have I forgotten about this?
No, there's no beef. I just poking fun at Chad. That's all. But no, yeah. The question mark. Like I said, where's the graphic for the big, huge question mark? Because we don't know. We have no idea. What a lot of these rosters are going to look like. What type of coaching staffs these guys are putting together. Who's going to end up where? Who moved where with whom? And it's going to be interesting to see, how, Jack's data. They're going to have their work cut out for them as to the early power rankings and to see how they're going to, rank things and what the spread and the lines are going to look like early on in the season.
$5 super chat from Colin Northrup, Motor City. Motor City, let's take a look at the V8s, the new look V8s. Can't wait to see what that roster looks like after free agency. Bossier City, that first game, they get the week 2 bye. They snag it before going to Lexington, so they take on a couple new faces in the SFL to start the season off. They finish their last home game is September 29th against Denver, and then they got a bye and 2 road games, 2 tough road games, at Louisiana, at Arizona. That is not an easy way to end it. And in fact, if you look at really all their road games, at Lexington, playoff team from last season, at Nashville, we don't know what's going to happen with them, at Minnesota, playoff team, at Canton, playoff team, and then Arizona and Louisiana, who are knocking on the door. Not the easiest schedule for Motor City to deal with, but I mean, they definitely have some spots where they can get hot.
There's a lot of question marks, Cam, but this is never a question mark for Motor City. They're the most interesting team in the league to me because they're always going to try something new. Whether it's 3 tight ends or 3 fullbacks or 5 quarterbacks, they're the most interesting team in the league to me. They're always going to try something new to improve, to try to make a mark in this league, and I expect nothing different this season. As you said, they have a new coach on board, and they're starting off this season with the opportunity to make some noise as well. I mean, Bossier City, obviously that's a move from Alamo City. We don't know who's coming over from there. Lexington, Atlanta, they were down a little bit last season. They lost some coaches and players from that roster this season, this offseason. So Motor City, man, I'm excited to see what they can do this season and what changes they've made this season that we're going to be excited about.
Yeah, I think the second half is definitely tougher than that first half. If they can get some forward momentum, we could see some big Motor City games down the stretch. Corey Menner's first super chat on the channel, $5 super chat. Let's see that Riverhog schedule, hashtag Tusks up. And here's a look at Pittsburgh, at Houston, at Canton. Ouch. To start the season. That is tough. One of the toughest 2-week stretches to start. But then if Pittsburgh can weather the storm, they host Charleston, host Chicago, they have a bye, have a chance to regroup, a couple road games against teams that did not make the playoffs last season, and they end with a bye leading into 2 final home games against non-playoff teams from last season, LA, Queen City. So, it's definitely not easy. Pittsburgh is definitely going to be up against it those first couple of weeks. But, Mike, if they can weather the storm, I think they're going to be okay.
They're losing week 1. We know that. but after that, we'll have to wait and see. And but yeah, congratulations to Corey and Butch and the entire Pittsburgh Riverhog organization on being expansion team in the league. It's going to be tough on them. Obviously, building a roster, no draft this off season, so it's going to be interesting to see what they can put together. But after the week 1 loss, hey, best of luck to them the rest of the way.
That's a look at Pittsburgh and Mike St. Green's non-biased opinion about what's going to happen with them. Ray Colston, $10 super chat, second super chat for LA. I don't know what happened. I didn't see the first one. Sorry, Ray, but here we go. LA Lycans schedule, it very balanced. I don't know if you noticed this, Mike, but only one team in the whole league plays 3 games in a row on the road. That's got to be a record. I don't know how we managed that, but it came out pretty balanced. And so nobody's really having to play a bunch of games on the road or anything like that. But Los Angeles does get 4 of their first 6 on the road. Their home openers against Louisiana, Sunday, July 21st. But they can make some noise down the stretch too. Denver, Pittsburgh, Albuquerque after a bye, and they take on Canton. That's obviously a tough matchup there for Los Angeles. We don't really know what Canton's going to look like. Their coach retired. It's a question mark just how good they're going to be. My guess is they're still going to be pretty good. But what are your thoughts on the Lycans, who in the last month and a half of last season really were looking a lot better?
Yeah, Los Angeles, they kind of give me those same Carolina Skyhawk vibes. When are they going to take that big step forward? They always seem to start slow, seemingly, or they seem to start fast and finish slow. They can never just put it all together for the entire season. And I'm just interested to see out of Los Angeles that they can put it all together for an entire season and make a strong playoff push. We saw them make the playoffs a few seasons ago after having a great season. Can they pull it all back together again and get back into those playoffs and see if they can make a run for the championship?
$17.75 super chat from Gunny. Mike Sangreen, please say your best oorah.
No, because I was not a Marine. I can give you some Army stuff.
Give us
I'll
some
give you some
stuff.
Army airborne stuff. Hoorah!
There you go.
Hoorah! But that's about all I have, Gunny. I won't do any Marine stuff.
And hey, with the 1775 super chat, let's take a look at Bossier City's schedule. They start with a couple of road games and a bye in there, so their home schedule doesn't get going late, but once it gets going, it gets going. 3 of their last 4 home games are against playoff teams from last season: Baltimore, Fort Worth, Houston. But will they have it? Will they have the gears in motion by then? We'll find out. But this is Bossier City, very interesting. They ended up with the earliest slate of byes in the league, Mike. So in the first 9 weeks, they only play 6 games. They played 3 straight games against teams that made the playoffs from last season. But they have a lot of time to gel as a unit. They have a lot of time to work on stuff. That could be a big advantage to them down the stretch, with a decently difficult down the stretch schedule, but at least they get all those games at home. They get Florida at home, too. What do you think about Bossier City?
Well, first of all, we only played 12 games. How does a team get 17 byes? I don't understand.
They get 3 byes. Are you counting?
Oh,
it's not 17 byes up there.
Okay, it's only 3. I just saw bye. What was the group that used to sing the song Bye Bye Bye? I don't know.
That's NSYNC.
There you go. So
now who doesn't know pop culture?
So yeah, that's all I saw was bye. So I thought I was looking at NSYNC, but you can't have a better opportunity, as you mentioned, to take advantage of a schedule like that. Being a new organization, you don't have to grind as much early on, especially early in the season as they have this. They can take their time, evaluate, come off of a win or loss, make adjustments, and keep it pushing. But yeah, Bossier City, they are easing their way into this season 23 schedule, and hopefully they can take advantage of it early.
3 of their last 4 games are in division. Mike, do you like division games at the back half of the season or the front half?
I like them in the back half because if you need to make up some ground, no better way to do it than head-to-head. So, obviously the division winner makes the playoffs. So if you can have an opportunity to take advantage of a division game late in the season, that's why I would rather have it.
$4.99 super chat from Robert Henson. Let's see the Central Division champions. #Be legendary. Minnesota starts with a pair of road games at Indy and at Atlanta before they come home to face the Baltimore Vultures in their home opener. That was one of the best regular season games of last season. Minnesota coming up just short in that matchup. They get 2 weeks to prepare for D.C., 2 weeks to prepare for Houston, 2 weeks to prepare for Florida. So the byes fall in a good spot for the Legend, taking on some difficult competition. And how about this for Minnesota? They end the season 5 straight games against playoff opponents from last season: Houston, Lexington, Van, Florida, Chicago. What do you think of Minnesota's schedule?
To me, Cam, Minnesota, they are absolutely one of the toughest teams in this league. They're tough to prepare for. They're a handful, on to handle from the offensive side of the ball. That they come at you with a ton of weapons. They're just well-rounded, well-coached, and they're absolutely one of the better teams in this league. And they are a couple of special teams play away from being in the championship game last season, and that's a tough team, tough matchup for anybody on this schedule, and I wouldn't look forward to playing them at all this season from whomever's on that schedule.
Chad Rowland's got a bone to pick with you. $5 super chat. MSG is just mad that he hasn't hit even close to the numbers he had when I was coaching him. Do you have a response?
Well, I did a couple of seasons ago, but I'm getting older, and I give the younger players opportunities to make plays and do things, and I've accomplished a lot already in this league, Chad. I don't need to make all the plays anymore like I used to for the team you coached.
All right, we're going to fire through these remaining schedules and just take a look around the league as we have gotten through all of our super chats. Thanks everyone for your support of the SFL. We're going to start out west for the teams that we haven't talked about. Let's talk about the Vancouver Legion. 3 of their first 4 on the road. Their home game is against Houston. They've got Florida on the schedule down in week 12. That's a tough 3-game stretch post-bye. Minnesota, Florida, Arizona. One nugget from Vancouver's schedule that stands
out. Probably now that they are the West Division has changed a little bit. That Arizona and Denver matchup later in the season, as I mentioned, those division games are going to be huge. Yep. Coming down the stretch. And one outside note about Vancouver: are they becoming probably the best team that never won it type franchise? I mean, they're always in the playoffs. They're always going to contend, but they can never make that next step once they get to the playoffs. Congratulations to Andy on making the Hall of Fame. And, I'm really looking forward to one season for them making that next step and seriously contending for a championship. They've always had a solid organization and solid team, but just can they finally put it all together and make that next step and contend for a championship?
That's a good show question for maybe Streets Are Talking. The best team, the best organization to never win one. Vancouver definitely got to be up there. That's a good thought, Mike. They do get 3 in a row at home. That's a rarity. We're about to look at a team that has an even bigger rarity, but not a lot of that in this schedule. Jeff Banfield, $5 super chat. What expansion team will have the best record, Mike? You want to weigh in on that? That would be Albuquerque, Nashville, Pittsburgh. Who are you thinking?
As we mentioned, we don't know a lot about the rosters, but for whatever reason, I'm leaning Nashville. Like I said, we know nothing about them, but we'll probably have a better answer for this question a couple of days from now when free agency starts. But I just get a good vibe from Nashville, and I think it may be them.
I can't imagine Albuquerque's roster is not going to be full of former Adams going to play for them. I don't know how many games they're going to win, but they definitely are going to have some talent. Let's get to the Adams schedule because theirs is one of the weirdest in the league, as weird as it can get, I guess. They've got 4 straight home games and 2 byes between August 30th and October 6th. So they do not leave the state of New Mexico for quite some time. They open up at Atlanta, and then they finish the season with at Bossier City and at Los Angeles. But, Mike, if they can't do anything with that mid part of the schedule, they're not going to be a playoff team, but they have a golden opportunity right there.
Yeah, that mid part of the schedule, just looking at that, Baltimore, Fort Worth, Arizona, a probably improved Indianapolis team, and then Charleston. Well, yeah, that middle of that schedule for them looks tough. Being out west with some veteran coaches and veteran teams does not help this Adams team either. But they're gonna have a lot to prove taking this step up to the next level, and they have some veterans on that team and probably some Adam alum that's going back over there to help this team out. But they're going to have a lot to prove early on, especially midway through this season.
Chris Porter, how we open with Atlanta? Well, that's what happens. I mean, we just that's it. That's entertainment, baby. That's all I could say. The Denver Nightwings are the only team in the league that have 3 straight road games, but they do play. At DC is tough, but at Motor City, at Los Angeles, those are winnable games. It's not too bad, and it's towards the very back half of the season, and they can get things going with 3 straight at home before that, plus a pair of byes. So between August 11th and September 15th, they're not leaving the friendly confines of Denver. They start nice too. Queen City, Albuquerque, Bossier City. You've got some young teams that they've been here, but they haven't been here with a capital H in this spot before they take on Houston in Week 4. Denver's probably the biggest mystery in the league, Mike. What is their roster going to look like? What's their identity going to look like? They finished off their season with that huge win over Tulsa in the final week of the season, and that's the last taste we have of the Nightwings.
Yeah, they're actually, with Jeremy Vega returning as we're expecting, the most intriguing team in the league to me, because it almost instantly gives them credibility in my book, and they're going to instantly be better than what they have been over the past couple of seasons. All we need now is Kramer Jackman to come back, and then that'll just seal the deal. And for a little bit, if we get some of that action coming back, but going to be interesting to see roster construction, how they're going to put things together. But I just automatically get a feel that these guys are going to be competitive from day one with the return of Jeremy Vega.
It's a new game and a new era, though, too. I mean, it's been a minute since Vega was coaching, and we'll see how they can adapt. All right, let's go to the East. Haven't looked at Atlanta's yet. Now this Atlanta's is the most bonkers schedule in the league. They start with 3 at home. How often do you get that reward? Albuquerque, Minnesota, Fort Worth. Mike, they play 8 straight non-division games, followed by 3 bye weeks and 4 division games. And when I saw that, saw that just a couple days ago and said, oh my gosh, that has to be some kind of mistake. But it's not. That's just the way that it played out in the final version of this schedule. So they're going to play everybody out of division, and then the East Division is theirs to go and take down the stretch. What do you think of that?
Yeah, they're going to find out a lot about themselves before that final stretch, right? And can they bounce back? I mean, they're losing a lot, with the expansion, and guys leaving, going over to Albuquerque. What will the Swarm look like season 23? It's going to be interesting to see, can they bounce back, and get back to the glory days of the Atlanta Swarm. Obviously, we're going to have to wait to find that out, but the rest of the league is going to get their shot at them. As you mentioned, the first 8 weeks, and then the division is going to come down to the last few weeks of the season to see if they can come away with are they in the East now, Cam?
Yep.
With an East Division championship.
All right, let's go to Florida's schedule. The defending champions, they start with a couple home games against Chicago and DC, followed by a bye. They've got road games against Charleston, and then a home game against Nashville, so back-to-back early East Division games there. But down the stretch for Florida is absolutely no joke. At Canton, versus Arizona, at Vancouver, at Minnesota, and versus Atlanta. It is a long road for Florida down the stretch as they as they try to put together another three-peat, the second for the organization. Mike, I was just saying that Florida's end-of-season schedule, pretty brutal. Canton, Arizona, Van, Minnesota, and then Atlanta, who always plays them tough.
Yeah, the two-time defending champion. This franchise could easily be a 7-time champion. I think they're only like 4 points away from being like a 7-time champion, Cam, as they're coming back back-to-back championships. The Vancouver, Minnesota, Atlanta, Arizona. Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, if they're going to win another championship, go for their second three-peat, they're really going to have their work cut out for them. But if any team and organization can do that, it'll be the Florida Storm.
Let's go to who we haven't seen in the North Division. Let's talk Baltimore Vultures here. 3 of their first 4 at home. The big game against Canton, the prime time against Indy, and then Albuquerque comes all the way east to their house. They finish off the season with 2 teams that love to try and beat Baltimore but don't often beat Baltimore, DC and Charleston. They have a lot of division games down the stretch as well, with that Queen City game on that Friday night. But the schedule comes together all right for Baltimore. They do finish with 4 of 6 on the road at the end, though.
Yeah, this is probably about the latest we've ever seen the Baltimore Vultures schedule hit the board. But yeah, interesting matchup with Canton. Baltimore gave the Classics everything that they can handle in the playoff matchup. I can't remember if it was semifinals or quarterfinals, but Baltimore had a great game plan to come at those guys, but just could not put any points on the board to get over that hump. It's going to be an interesting game to start off the season with for them. And with the departure of Sir Ron Yates, I just knew what this guy seemingly to me on the outside looking in meant to that organization. And now I'm just curious as to what we're going to see with the rest of the Baltimore Vultures roster. Is it going to be a lot of turnover? Is it going to mostly remain the same? But it's going to be interesting to see how they look moving forward, especially with the loss of a guy that I know was a great locker room guy, and he was always in the chat with nothing but support for this Baltimore Vultures organization. It's going to be interesting to see what they look like moving forward.
The Canton Classics, will they have a championship game hangover or not? We'll see what that organization looks like by the time they hit the field on the road against Baltimore in the convention. And look, honestly, that's probably when you want to play Baltimore. They got no film on you. You're going to have a new coaching staff, right? So you get to throw something new and different at them. The championship rematch is in Week 9. They finish with a Week 15 bye. So if they are getting into the playoffs, they'll have a couple weeks of rest for that. Yeah, it's a look at Canton's schedule. What do you think about what they look like?
Well, I said Denver was the most intriguing team for me going into this next season. But Canton, I'm the most curious about seeing how they respond to losing that championship game. You mentioned a possible hangover. I don't see a possible hangover. I see how do they get over a major disappointment of losing a championship game after coming off of such a dominant season. So I'm really curious to see how they come into this next season. As you mentioned, new coaching staff, new coach. Will they respond positively or negatively? We'll see. But their work is going to be cut out for them early with Baltimore, as you mentioned. Probably getting them early will help, as well as getting the expansion. Pittsburgh Riverhogs will probably help that with that cause. But I'm going to be curious to see how they respond after losing the championship game in the fashion that they did.
Let's see if we can clear something up here in the chat. Indy saying that you have us playing Canton on their schedule, but not on ours. The Canton schedule is incorrect. Let's see what that should look like. My apologies. In Week 3, Canton hosts Vancouver on July 28th. That is the game that's missing from the schedule. So Indy plays at Mexico City Week 3. Canton hosts Vancouver in Week 3, so we'll get Canton's schedule corrected and back out to them. By the way, I have high-quality 1080p graphics of all your team schedules. They will be released after the show, along with a release on the website. Hey, we missed Arizona when we were going over the West. Let's double back to the Scorpions here. They alternate home and away games for much of the season before a couple road games at Denver and at Florida. Playing Florida and D.C. in back-to-back weeks is no joke, but they get a couple nice buys. They get a bye after convention, and they also get the Week 15 bye, potentially heading into the playoffs. Your thoughts on Arizona?
Yeah, how is this team going to bounce back? That's what's really most interesting to see for me, far as what Arizona does. I mean, it was they've been playoff contenders, championship contenders over the past few seasons, and then really struggled last season. Has Eddie had a time to kind of have some downtime and come back fully refreshed this next season, come back with some new things that maybe we haven't seen, and seeing that they can get back on track and become the Arizona Scorpions that we've become accustomed to seeing over the past few seasons, and not have such a down season as they did last year.
Let's look at the DC Dragons here. They have got Nashville at home before going to Florida. That's a huge game in week 2. They have Canton in week 4 too, before a bye and Minnesota. So you're talking about 3 of the 4 semifinal teams in the first 5 games of the season. That is incredibly difficult and daunting for DC. But like a couple other teams, I mean, they're in the middle of the schedule. They got a bunch of new faces: Bossier City, Pittsburgh, Lexington. Throw Denver in there. We don't know what they're going to do at Fort Worth. That could be a big game in week 15.
Yeah, that could be a big game, and that was the one that actually stood out to me, because that's not a divisional game. That could really
Right.
probably hurt one, or if not both, of those teams going into the final week of the season, as far as a division championship being head to head with someone else. They could possibly need to win themselves and need some help from somebody else to possibly win a division or make it into the playoffs based on that one matchup alone.
Let's go to the South. We haven't talked about your headhunters yet, have we? Let's look at Houston, alternating home and road games, just like most of the teams. You do get a huge stretch in the middle of the season with a bye sprinkled in there, but Baltimore, Fort Worth, Minnesota, that is a big stretch with Fort Worth being in division. And then you end with 3 division games. You just talked about it earlier, about having those division games late. 3 division games with a bye on the headhunter schedule. I'm sure you see 12-0, but what do you think about how this all played out?
I tell you what, I wish I could see 12-0, and hopefully it's 12-0. I know we're 1-0, and I do know that, but after that, it really gets difficult. Vancouver's always a tough matchup. Baltimore, Fort Worth, tough division matchup all the time. As I mentioned earlier, that rivalry, budding rivalry with Minnesota. That was one of the toughest losses I've ever experienced in my SFL career. Basically, a 4th and inches away from advances into the semifinals of the SFL playoffs against Minnesota last season, and a tough overtime loss. And then, of course, all the division games are tough. And I see 2-0. Indianapolis is on the schedule, so 2-0, and then we'll take whatever happens after that.
Let's go over to Fort Worth to take a look at the Toros. 3 of the first 4 on the road. That's not an easy stretch, plus a bye in there, so 1 home game in the first 5 weeks. They do get DC at home to end the season, but man, Canton, DC down the stretch. Fort Worth better hope they're in a position like they were last season, where they had a lot of wins, and they didn't necessarily need a win down the stretch of that one. Mexico City, Arizona, Houston, Chicago, right there in the middle of that schedule. Quite daunting. See if Fort Worth can get hot early.
At Fort Worth, they're approaching that possible best to never, that hasn't won a championship level as well. I mean, because Fort Worth, they season in and season out, people are putting them in the championship contention and saying, hey, they may win this championship this season. And so they've been right there several seasons. A couple of seasons ago, I want to see the 1 loss, undefeated going into the playoffs, and wasn't able to pull it off. But Fort Worth, they're going to be a great team, just like they typically are season in and season out.
Louisiana in the South, they will start against Mexico City in that big rivalry game. Got Houston all the way down there in week 13. Couple of new faces, Bossier City and Pittsburgh in there in the middle of the schedule right after Florida. That Louisiana-Florida game is fun. It's not in division anymore, Mike, but we get to see that rivalry renewed again. Louisiana-Florida is always a blast.
Yeah, definitely always a great matchup. Louisiana, they're coming off of a down season as well. They were trying to get acclimated to the then South Tex-Mex. Let's see how they're going to do this season in the Texiana, as I'm going to go ahead and officially rename it. And if it catches on, it catches on. If
If
it
you
doesn't,
say
it doesn't. But
Texiana, that leaves out Mexico.
well, the E, maybe there's an E in it. Let them be the Tex E
I could
in it,
I could see
as
your
in
brain churning,
Mexico.
and I could see your brain churning and throwing out all the things you couldn't say. That's
But yeah, because who cares? Leave Mexico City out. They've been a part of it the whole time. Let's welcome the new people.
Hey, speaking of which, Mexico City ends with 3 of 5 at home. They will finish the season at Nashville. That could be a big-time game. They get a Week 14 bye, and they get a bye post-convention. They will host Indianapolis in their home opener, and then, of course, the big home game August 12th against Atlanta to honor Matt Wilson and others. Canton's on their schedule as well, August 25th. Your thoughts on Mexico City?
Yeah, as far as the buys go, that you can't ask for anything probably more perfect than that. Um, it's a long stretch from week 3 to week 7 or 8 or whatever in there, but it seems like a good balance to recharge your batteries and get ready for the second half of the season. And then if they really need, if they're making a playoff push, it's a good chance. Good opportunity to get a bye and get rested and gear up for a playoff run. So Mexico City, they're catching a nice break, a nice balance with the buys in their schedule. But the South Division is always tough, and a couple of matchups in there. Arizona, Indianapolis, those are intriguing matchups as well. So seeming tough schedule for Mexico City, to be honest with you. But they made some strides last season to get back into contention and look better than they did the prior season. So looking forward to seeing how they look this season.
I think our last team is Lexington. I think we've hit every other team, as far as I can tell, on the schedule. All team schedules are now available on the SFL website, along with our news release of the complete schedule. You'll also be able to see the full schedule within our website as well, coming up here in just a few minutes after we get off air. But Lexington starts their new era with 4 of 6 at home, 4 of 6 on the road down the stretch. But their buys are late in the season. If they need some retooling, it's going to have to wait. Their first bye comes in week 9, and then down the stretch, so they got Minnesota and DC back-to-back after a Vancouver game. That's a very difficult place in the schedule. But week 15, this is one of those teams that's always on the playoff bubble. And last season, Tulsa played in the last week of the season and lost to Denver and had to hope they got in the playoffs. This year they'll be sitting at home hoping that they can get in. But if Gabriel Manning is back, if the MVP is back, expect some big things out of Lexington.
Well, quirky things stand out to me. And the first thing that stood out to me is they're going to get all the city teams out of the way early. Queen City, Motor City, Bossier City. They got them all covered, so they're going to cover all the cities. Let's just get that out of the way to start with. But yeah, if this Tulsa / Lexington roster is in place with Gabriel Manning, that's going to be a tough matchup for whomever the Lexington Miners play. Gabriel Manning is you have to single-handedly game plan for him alone every time you go up against this guy. It's going to be interesting to see if he goes over there with that franchise. But if he doesn't, that's going to be one of the most hype signings of free agency if he does happen to move somewhere else and move along somewhere else.
Doug Day said in the chat, question, will Cam auction the SFL light behind him? No way. Way too much money and effort went into that to get that in the wall. That is not it's not coming out anytime soon. And hey, Damon Simeon, $5 super chat, says, let's call the new South Division Texacoana. What do you think? And that wasn't just his suggestion. There were a number of people in the chat saying that. Texacoana.
Well, not bad, Damon. I think I can stomach that.
I don't know if Texaco. Well, Texaco, the gas station, is spelled a little bit differently, but
But yeah, Tex. Yeah, I guess
Texacoana.
he paid. He paid $5 for it, so we can go with it.
I can live with it for tonight, it's for sure. All right, that is the schedule release show. We have gone over every team. You can check out every team's schedule on the website. Download the schedule wallpaper. Get it out to all your fans. The schedule is, or the season 23 is almost here. Just a little bit a month, about 5 weeks away, a little bit more than 5 weeks away. And we'll be down in Houston having fun and having a good time. Mike, as always, it was great to be here with you. Any last words as we get ready for the free agency frenzy and the signing day in 6 days? That's next Monday.
Yeah, great being here again, Cam, for another season. Looking forward to, keeping this tradition going for next season. Also, convention next month. Looking forward to seeing everyone down here in Houston, and hopefully all the reno is done and can get everyone over here to the St. Green residence as we did the convention before when it was here. And for us Houston Headhunters go, didn't really talk a whole lot about us, but looking forward to some key additions. Free agent frenzy, as you mentioned, about 6-7 days from now. Looking forward to those key additions and coming off of a great season and looking forward to making big strides and a serious championship run this year.
All right, let's do it. For Mike St. Green, I'm Cameron Irvine. This has been the Schedule Release Show. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see you for Minor League tomorrow night, Week 4 action. Get a chance to watch some dev players and some of the new rookies in action. It's been a fun season so far. And then free agency frenzy is Monday night, or Monday early evening, I guess, as we go over some of the biggest signings and storylines around the SFL and tie it to the schedule release. Are any of them going to be playing their former teams? What are the new storylines? All that good stuff. For Mike and Cam, this has been a presentation of the SFL, and we'll see you tomorrow night for minor league action. Night, everybody.